Making your way about 2 minutes. While that is underway, I just want to make a quick announcement. If you require any type of specialized interpretation, we have an ASL interpreter, Spanish interpreter here, and I'm going to hand the mic over to her for a brief announcement.
Buenas tardes. Para aquellos que deseen en la mesa que está en la entrada y vamos a hacer la interpretación simultánea. Gracias.
Started in about 1 minute, so if you would please make your way to the seats, we'd very much appreciate it. We've got quite a lineup tonight, so if you could please make your way to the seats, we'd very much appreciate it. Thank you. Spending your evening with us. I appreciate it very much. My name is Patrick Maynard. I'm the director of the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. We have several individuals from a number of agencies here tonight to present on various topics. At the end of the presentation, we will be all available for questions, and we'll have a microphone available to go to the audience. Important key thing though, we want to try to keep the presentation on track as much as possible time-wise, so we'll hold all questions until the end, and then we'll bring all the speakers up and answer those questions for you. Before we jump into the first presentation, I just wanted to introduce a few people in the room that will not be speaking tonight, but are here if you have any questions for them. Fire Chief Dustin Gardner in the back. Thanks, Chief, for being here. Assistant County CEO Mike Pettit. Know where Mike went, somewhere back there. Wendy Mota from Congressman Salud Carvajal's office. Wendy, there you were, perfect. Particular Police Chief Trina Newman, who covers our Ojai station, will be here tonight as well. She's just running a little bit late. Who's been this, but Nikki Katz. Nikki has been a huge advocate, and I will tell you, we've been through a lot of incidents, floods, fires, other types of stuff, and I've never seen somebody with so much energy that you've done. We really appreciate it. And with that, I'd like to make some opening comments.
I want to start by thanking all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. People are in this room. You might have heard it's been kind of a traumatic day at the county with the train derailment and more employee who was hit and critically injured. And so he was a public works employee, and so our public works team was out there all day, and a lot of our first responders were out there, but they were committed to being here tonight to present to all of you. Long day, and you've made time for the community, so thank you. The storms came in January and February, and obviously our immediate attention was into that to do in the moment. That's the support that we needed for the residents. That was largely working with FEMA, and both Patrick and myself were able in Brownlee through neighborhoods, and because of that work and because of our great leadership at the federal level, we were able to get a FEMA major designation and then a FEMA individual support, and I hope that many of you were able to take advantage of that support that we got. And so Wendy, make sure you thank Salud. But since then, we've had to think long-term and prepare for the next inevitable storm, fire, and make sure that we as the county are doing what we can to prepare all of you for that situation. And that's the goal of tonight, is for you to hear from the various departments at the county level who are focused on the protection and the safekeeping of the Camp Chaffee and Foster Park neighborhoods. And so I hope you find this informative. This is a one evening thing. Concerns, please feel free to. We're here to serve, and please don't ever hesitate to help. And so with that, I would love.
Thank you, Supervisor. Appreciate each and every one of you for being here tonight. Making plans, not with just a need, and what is the community telling us is the priority. That's really having the vision and leadership and setting this up, as well as Office of Emergency Services, Patrick, all of our first responders that are here. It's been a really rough day today, and so I really appreciate each and every one of you for being here tonight. I think tonight is significant because you do have so many people around the room from the county field, and they are going to be able to the right people in the room to provide you with the information that you need. A lot has been done since the January storms, and we know that come thanking you for your patience as we move forward, so we can really hear from just like the supervisors back to you to respond to, even if you don't have the question this week, please reach out, know that we are concerned.
I mentioned this at the beginning, but you notice the camera in the back of the room. We are streaming this live at VC Emergency. Watch this again. So with that, we're going to jump right into the presentations. I'd like to invite up Jeff Pratt, who's our Ventura County Public Works Director. Jeff.
Hello, everyone. So I've got a few questions before I begin. Got quite the slide deck. How many of you are here to hear about the creek? Oh, good. You're going to see the whole deck. What about the road? Yep, all right. And we're going through it. Let's get started. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Is what we've been explain everything that we've explained to her. And all until we do something that might drain it, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. It's pointless. Low water crossing, we do expect it to be underwater at times. It was given to the county in about 1938. We, when it was necessary. They're monitoring the situation, and we're going to some channeling on private property, which we'll get into because you're going to have 5 feet of mud on either side of the road. We only have about a 40-foot right-of-way through there, and it's 20 feet of pavement. The pavement and clean that mud out requires a bit of regulatory to the extent that we can, but until it's channelized, we can't get on private property. We also are working on a grant to, the extent of that was we think we can get that amount so the 5% match later, and it does require that it be maintained. We're doing, not listed on this slide, is we're looking at trying to buy some property, some properties that are blocking what is the floodway, and I'll tell you what a floodway is in a moment. But bottom line up front, that's where we've landed on what we can do. I didn't want you to wait through a half hour or 40 minutes of meeting and technology and hydraulics. And I'll tell you why. We're going to talk about Coyote Creek's watershed, and a watershed is just, it can be defined as a piece of property that drains to a point. The Coyote Creek watershed that we're talking about tonight all drains to Camp Chaffee Road. And the natural processes. We'll look pre and post the public infrastructure that we have in the hurdles that we face by several regulatory agencies, the most notable of, and to get in these things and work. This is a FEMA floodplain. The FEMA floodplain was mapped in 1985, and I know that's subsequent to when most of those structures were built. Privileges in that floodplain and floodway that others don't enjoy because you were grandfathered in. But this kind of development that you're in now would not be permitted today under any set of circumstances. We're going to talk a little bit about the flooding history and our response. We're going to talk about our roadway access response, and then again, we're going to run through a lot of. This is what it looks like at the macro scale. Does this have a laser pointer on it, Patrick? Doesn't seem to. But I can walk around. We've just idealized Coyote Creek and Santa Ana Creek through the lake. There's a dam that blocks mostly below the dam. We'll talk about that come from the mountain. Thomas Fire, which was 2017. Let's see. We're going to zoom in a little bit. These are the parcels. Or yeah, you probably recognize this. This crossing. This is Coyote Creek below the dam, and it has much the same shape as it's always had throughout history, which are producing a tremendous amount of sediment. view from 1940. Number of reasons. One is the land use. It's really hard. Told you about, which has been there forever, and you can kind of see, if you get close up, Camp Chaffee. And I believe that we have some of this stuff posted for you to look at up close later, if you haven't already. Again, we're going to be talking about the. You see, there was not a lot of development. Excuse me, down here, a little bit along Camp Chaffee in 1945. This predates the dam. And I believe the dam for Casitas was finished in 1959, round numbers. And that's significant because that changes the hydrology. It changes the way water flows through here. Reservoir. When it does spill, it spills the natural flow that comes through there. Of Reclamation constructed a dam around 1959. It's the water supply for Ojai. I don't know if you know this, and parts of Ventura, but the Ventura River watershed is the only watershed that we have in Ventura County that's completely independent of state water. And that's hugely important for a number of reasons. But the point is, that is a feature that I don't think you want to do without. The watershed upstream dam's now 3 square miles. So before the dam was there, you had a watershed that was about 44 square miles in area. The dam first spilled in 1978. 2005. That's going to be important later. The evolving regulatory conditions that came probably subsequent to the construction of most of the houses up there, the Clean Water Act, which has a direct impact on things we can and can't do inside the stream. We'll talk about that in some detail. The sediment as a pollutant now, and it's one of the higher pollutants. It also talk about the Endangered Species Act passed in 1970. Ventura River, some 26 threatened and endangered species prepared to do work there, and we're going to talk about those specific to Coyote Creek in a minute. And then, of course, we've got critical habitat designations up and down the river, which just means everything's expensive. It's hard to. We can't. The California Department has an additional layer of regulation we have to deal with, and they have a different area of authority, which we'll show you in a moment, which go above and beyond the federally listed species and are counted in the 26. So we'll also talk about FEMA floodplain mapping, what a flood. Talk about why FEMA came to town. It's really an insurance program, and it's designed to prevent things like this from happening so the feds don't have to come in, declare disasters, and pay people out. Over time, it's gotten tighter and tighter. Its initial stages, it was a free-for-all, free money. Then I'm talking about mid-'80s on the Missouri River and the St. Louis. Quite a bit. Which is the chance of a 1% storm. So first, the Corps of Engineers, it regulates floodplain, waterway as a federal. But they have limits of wetland, both next. Is that an alarm? The same of their jurisdiction, right? Not only do they, but they like to go into the riparian. Things grow, and that they feel provide this in their eyes. This stuff is means we push back on them a lot, and there's goes on. So let's. These are the. I don't know if you can all read them, but you got Southern California steelhead, the red-legged frog, the least Bell's vireo, and the yellow-billed cuckoo. I've mentioned that I brought some friends along tonight. The first he leads a team of biologists. Too strong a word, but negotiate questions. Pam can answer them. And he is the head of our sheds he takes care of. One is, and he's in charge of the Ventura River. These keep that road clear. And roads and transportation. Anitha, you want to stand up for? Mike and Manny both had videos showing the last cleanup later, or you can view on a laptop. Like trying to work in the soup. This is a cartoon, I guess, from FEMA, and this is how they define. As they go out and they map where water would be, and they map that water level. Then they take until that raises a foot. When that raises a foot, that becomes the. When they designed a floodplain, people like you would be up in arms because they would be taking your property. Let you fill in the floodplain. Infinitely high fill is air that's inside this to them. So bothered in theory, you're not supposed to turn over building, you're not supposed to do any of that. Now, but doubt, there are all sorts of everywhere that had been diverted by. It was a mess. Interpretation of the law. We so some things that have been done in the past, and I existed, and there's been stuff post FEMA. Because we're going to show you some aerials. Floodway. And then we're going to. So, this is this is the overlay of the FEMA floodway and floodplain of some areas here. And this might be the FEMA panel, which road is, and that's floodway. That's the area that you stay. Plain, that wider area that we talked about. Floodplain, and it becomes this area quite a bit, and you'll see that effect when. Now, all of this is important because the questions that we're going to give you when you start asking them. And what we've done is removed for where you're to the floodway and floodplain. Some of you are right in the middle of the flow up, slows flow down, and backs flow up and down this creek until you get. And this bridge is the Santa Ana Bridge, which is right in this entire neighborhood. Now, there are programs to buy houses. 25% match and a willing seller. Only deal. One of the profile long distance at some portion that we're interested in is the portion. You see how it's the flattest part of the bottom of the bridge, and it gets onto Parks. Real problems are that black mark here. These are each a foot mark, so right there. This is a private bridge where this profile was taken. You got constrictions and flat stuff. About the limits of a project that might be able to help here. All of this is private property. Allowed to work on private property. Oh, something else to notice is this is the water surface elevation profile. And generally the water surface follows. See how it flattens here? That's because you got the same amount of, it gets deeper. You got the same amount of water through, and when it slows up, you've got that same deeper, it loses energy. Loses energy and starts dropping stuff. So you see that happening. This is because the up to this point. So you get the creek. Next thing of interest and important, low water crossing. What you see here is the profile of the road. Can't 4 to 5 feet of mud on the flat plan here. We're looking at is a wall of mud down here, a wall road. And that's what I'm talking about when I say you'll be. We have the ability to channel. Thank you, Joan. So, and we're able to work on private property. So, what's happened on there, and we heard this from some of you. Do it, of course, for the clean water. And the river with Boulder. Not do that. I was the first big storm by then Public Law 8499 and I don't know all the public policy behind that, but I assume people work on private property, you might be doing others, and you're spending. In 2005, division of USDA, you'll be hearing. We did some work on private property throughout the watershed. Prior to water, standing we'll go get some money from NRC. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. The total cost of that project was about $130,000. $22,000 of that. And the rest is yours. That didn't happen. And what we do in county road network. In other words, fixing slides and was given to us in 1938. There's one road commission. There were supervisors or to the extent maintain the fairly with and that money says you can only work in the county's right of way. So yeah, we can't work off of private property. So culverts, and we try to keep access. And it is not well understood by all. As long as you don't divert flow from a different place, from increase flow, you don't do anything that increases. Does that affect me? I've heard some of you say works. It gets past you, you get drainage law in this particular We are looking at building some into 50,000, and if we get that money, we will build those culverts. Other than that, we're trying to make sure have access that moves during rain events, and there's even debris, and by debris, everything that's coming down out of the watershed. The Thomas Fire burned it. This is the first. And so you're seeing a little increased sediment load. Because water up, sort of maintenance across the private property. And access issues on Camp Chaffee. To the best Chaffee, keep it clean. Sides, picking with the water that's draining. That drain above it that had been perched from the storm going to abate. Look at flooding. Moment, but we scoped a number of projects. Now, what I've been talking to you come into play when we're trying to figure out what we can do. Encroachments, and it all. In other words, and all around it doesn't exceed the cost. Well, then the channel costs. Say it's 10 million. Well, why would you build the channel when you can buy the houses of a benefit? The grant to them with a grant following. Harsh, but money. We look. The removal of limits at this point are here. You got Santa Ana Road here. We've talked to. We were going to take the project down onto Parks property. All the way of them. So I don't. It ends up here. The cost of that project and the project look like this. Into talk to you about all this vegetation is 25. And Glenn, did you moving? Well, it's a lot. Have applied a couple of months ago to NRCS for the project. To get the money today, we're still got it. Contract code, and then you contractors lose tomorrow, even if we had the money today. Options that we looked at, and we're where we started in the conversation, and this is why I spent so much time on explaining our constraints and benefit cost ratios. These would be a concrete self-cleaning channel build and keep in our inventory. Bottom of these are 20. I think that's a best guess of what, and I know you probably never, of what would be required by the across the bottom. And that's just the best guess, so we could do cost estimating, right? This portion of the channel, somewhere around 30 is the balance of that 63 million, and we figure that it protects just the channel, not the bridge. So you can see but he's going to give us that kind of money. Now, for example, on the lower Ventura River, we have to fix that's in the city of Ventura, and we need $40 million to fix that, and we can't find it. And we're looking, just by virtue, would be in second place to something like the Ventura River. Of that sort in the Ventura. That are down here, and I think that property is the choke point where it gets very narrow. And if it were clear above it. To improve, went through that. We've got all the same constraints we have to look at for building that road across Camp Chaffee. Was building a roadway standards. The roadway protection from lawsuits. Are consistent on this point. We would have to bridge the entire floodway. So you see the floodway in the dark blue? About 253 feet. Approaches to the bridge on either side would require that we, and potentially it might have some negative consequences for this property. It's never been the community's but it is a possibility. Where would you saw that we built a bridge on? Yeah, well, officially to build that because that blocks highly likely it's going to have rails. Rural community, I'm sure. I would like to think that's why you're living there, but maybe I'm wrong. But that's a possibility. Yes. So anyway, that's where I stop. Question. Thank you.
It's quite a bit because her arms are going numb. Middle there, we've got water in the back, and